Welcome back to the Placeholder Podcast, everybody. I'm Caley Fretz. We got a great show for you this week. Joining me, Kit Nicholson. Welcome back.
Hello.
Dane Cash.
Yes? I thought you were going to say hi. Hi.
No,
hey, Caley.
No. I was just sort of throwing your name out into the ether.
I'm here.
Yeah. And Ronan Mc Laughlin. Welcome, Ronan.
That's me. I'm going to use my voice now so that people know to associate this voice with the comments that proceed in this podcast.
Well, originally, Ronan, we were only going to have you on for about 10 minutes, but then we decided to just bring you in for the whole thing. Well, we got a great show for you. We got a lot to talk about. The Vuelta wrapped up over the weekend. Moo is back. We're not really going to talk much about that, to be perfectly honest, except for the fact that he called Roglic something about picking up the crumbs of the good bike riders, which I think is kind of rude. We're going to talk a little bit about Roglic and the Vuelta. We've got some Visma vibe shift updates. We have a really important update on what on earth Peter Sagan has been doing in the Mediterranean. We've got a British corner. There's a whole bunch going on over on the Isles. Some good things, some bad things. We'll get to that later in the show. Also some potted plants. Big fan of the potted plants. And then we're going to wrap up with a little Mount Rushmore of cycling kit. We'll get to that at the end of the show. I do have a bit of housekeeping before we get into it. This is the last Placeholders.
Gasp.
I like how you phrased that.
Right? We've been threatening to do this for what? 6 months? A year? I can't remember exactly how long. We have been threatening to change the name, do sort of a rebrand on this show. That will include some new music. It will include a new name. Otherwise, the show will remain pretty much exactly the same. It's going to be all, the four of us or Johnny or Ian or whoever else, getting together to talk about the week in bikes. That doesn't change. The actual content doesn't change. But frankly, Placeholders is not a great name and was always intended to be a placeholder. And we've now reached the point where we're going to give it sort of its real name. So as of next week, this show is going to be called the Spin Cycle Podcast. Now, you may read Johnny Long's newsletter called Spin Cycle every week. We think it's a great match for what we try to do here on the show. So we're going to borrow that name, and we're going to now have a Spin Cycle newsletter and a Spin Cycle podcast.
Does that mean that the people on the Spin Cycle podcast will be spin doctors going forward?
I think so.
Okay.
And we have to do it from inside a washing machine every week. It's going to be a bit awkward.
Would that help the acoustics, or would that
probably hinder?
I wonder if I can find any photographs of me in my acting days in the pantomime when I actually had to fall into a washing machine. And that has just popped into my head for the first time in about a decade, just now. Great. Yeah, it was a ridiculous scene. But for a small village, it was quite well done.
Please do.
I was fully grown human being falling into a washing machine covered in soap suds. Anyway,
oh, wow.
That's some tangents.
So the reason I mention this is because the little tile when you pull this podcast up is going to change next week. So don't look for Placeholders. Look for Spin Cycle Podcast. Make sure you share it with all your friends, as always. And yeah, we're looking forward to this. It's been a long time coming. That name was picked before Escape actually ever existed. For those of you that have been listening for a long time, it was picked in some of the first episodes that Dane and Dave Rome and I made shortly after our From Outside and Cycling Tips. And yeah, like I said, it's time for the placeholder to give way to an actual name.
the place is no longer held?
The place is no longer held. Yeah, like I said, new music. We will retain a hint of xylophone, which again, for anybody who was listening way back in the day, the reason there's xylophone in our tune is because the first tune that we ever ran on Placeholders, I literally played on my daughter's xylophone, like little kid xylophone. Anyway, we're going to retain a bit of that, but things are about to shift next week. Please don't send me angry messages about it. Just, enjoy life's great tapestry and the way that it always changes. There's the train. Some things don't change. But now let's get into the show. We're going to kick off with the Vuelta. Dane, who won the Vuelta?
Well, Caley, because I watched the Vuelta, I know that Primož Roglic won the race. I hope you also had a chance to watch it, Caley.
I watched lots of the Vuelta, actually.
That's great. That's good news. Primož Roglic, now the 4-time winner, makes him a record tire, which is pretty amazing. And I think it's something that there's a handful of riders. I think I've talked about this a fair bit on this show and on how the race was won as well. There's like a bunch of riders out there who I feel like they're often defined by what they haven't done, and makes me feel bad for them sometimes. And I feel like Roglic is one of those riders. It's like, oh, He's good, but, and that's a bummer because he's a 4-time Vuelta winner, and it's really hard to win anything 4 times. And,
King of the Crumbs is what Moo called him.
Yeah.
Moo, if people will recall, is the still, I think, anonymous, although I think we've kind of figured out who it is, person associated with Tadej Pogačar. And Tadej Pogačar's coach called him the King of Crumbs, which is kind of true, right? Like, he can't do it at the Tour. He's never going to win a Tour de France, but he manages to sort of show up and beat everybody when everyone's tired.
I think that's true if you refer to literally everything that's not the Tour as crumbs.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's kind of a sad way of looking at the sport, right?
It's a realistic way of looking at it.
I mean, the guy's an Olympic gold medalist, too. That's also pretty impressive.
That's true. That's
he's
not
got
crumbs.
more Grand Tours than Tadej Pogačar.
Yeah. And I mean, he has more Grand Tours than this entire podcast combined. So
That's true.
I think
It's also
that
true.
we can't,
And it's almost as meaningless a statement.
we can't give him too much crap. But no, there's something to that. There's something like he's just sort of the almost man always, right? Like he can do it at the Vuelta, he can do it in 1 week stage races, but he can't do it when the top dogs show up.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
If he can't do it, then what is everybody else who isn't winning these races doing? They're not even lifting crumbs at that point. It's like, this is a ridiculous statement.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Pogačar and Vingegaard are head and shoulders above the rest of the planet. If those two
everybody else gets
freaks
crumbs.
didn't exist, Roglic would be like one of the all-time great cyclists. Because he probably would have a Tour by now. Oh, granted, he does.
But you can't say
fall
that.
down in July quite a bit. But
yeah, and that's like an impossible hypothetical because you could do the same thing for if Lance Armstrong didn't exist, Jan Ullrich is the greatest Grand Tour rider of all time. Right? Like you can't do that. That's not how sports work. So I'm not saying this to disparage Roglic. Like he the way that he won this Vuelta, I think was. It was a masterclass, right? Like he lost all that time to Ben O'Connor, and he never really panicked. He just sort of clawed it back and clawed it back and clawed it back and clawed it back, and he knew that he would eventually do it. And he knew that the last couple stages of the race were incredibly difficult, and that barring him falling down, which he doesn't seem to do at the Vuelta, he only does at the Tour. He was going to pull back O'Connor. I shouldn't say not always.
One time. He did it one time.
Yeah. He was going to pull back O'Connor slowly, and he did exactly that. It was perfectly executed from a lot of different perspectives. And to be clear, like he's one of the greatest Grand Tour riders of this generation. He's just like the third or fourth best one, which is unfortunate for him.
I would say he's the third best Grand Tour rider of this. He's won the Giro and the Vuelta. Like he's won 2 out of 3 of them. Moo's position on this is ridiculous in that he's only collecting crumbs. It's like,
well, Moo is slightly
biased.
Biased.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like the whole argument is silly. I mean, I think part of it is it's overly focused on Tour success, and I feel like how can you enjoy the cycling season if only July is the only thing you can care about? Because I like watching the other 10 months or so of high level racing. I mean,
where there's
Vincenzo
usually
Nibali,
better racing anyway.
That's also true. Vincenzo Nibali, I think you could put in the same boat. I mean, the only Tour he won, I think, because Froome and Contador crashed out. Yeah. Now, I don't view it this way. So I think of Nibali as an all-time great because I don't view it this way. But if you're going to say getting crumbs, are
you saying Roglic and Nibali are on the same level? Like historically,
I think Roglic is better than Nibali.
I think they're pretty close.
But yeah, I mean, it
doesn't have a cool nickname.
You can take the what ifs. You can apply them to absolutely everything. Sorry, Brendan, I know you want to talk. But you could say about this year's Tour de France, yes, I think we all understand that Pogačar was on his best level ever this year, probably. But he wasn't pushed to the same degree. So you could say, what if Vingegaard had been on great form? There were so many other instances. There's so many last year in Pogačar's broken wrist.
I'm saying you can't do the what ifs.
No, exactly. So you
no what ifs.
Because if you do, you have to do it with every single race, and then nobody looks good.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got started on the what-ifs here. I think someone has misinterpreted one of my comments. I was merely saying that this guy, if Roglic is merely picking up crumbs, then the entire rest of the World Tour professional rider
doesn't even do
base doesn't even do that. He's the best crumb picker that there is.
I also like his attitude at these races. At the Giro and at the Vuelta, he always seems to be really happy. And his interviews towards the end of this race were just really funny. When he was asked about having tied the record at the end of yesterday's stage, he said, nice. And then there was tumbleweed, and the interviewer then moved on.
I think he does that on purpose.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a great thing. It makes me smile.
I guess my point, to Ronan's point, is that both can be true. Like, he is fundamentally, at this point in time, within this generation, the world's greatest crumb picker, right? Like, when everybody shows up, he cannot win. That's just the reality.
The Tour de France. That's true of the Tour de France, I think.
Yeah, but if those guys showed up for the Vuelta, then he also wouldn't win the Vuelta.
He wins at Zulia when others turn up. He wins Liège when others turn up. He wins other races when I can't believe I'm defending Roglic. The roles have switched here because usually, Caley, I'm making your points here. But
he also won an Olympic time trial, and that's the Olympics. There's really no excuses for anyone there. I mean, that's impressive.
I'm saying he's the world's greatest crumb picker.
But I think those are things that everybody did show up to. I mean, it's not like the Tour is the only one where it's I don't know, where you can say,
well, why can't he win the Tour?
The Tour. I think you could say that about the Tour, that he's just not good enough.
Yeah,
but I think if everybody showed up to the Vuelta, I think he still might win it. People, early on when he was winning the Vuelta, early on in his
maybe like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean that was people were showing up. Tadej Pogačar showed up to a Vuelta that he raced and he beat him.
Yeah, but Tadej Pogačar was like 20.
And he wasn't racing for GC.
He was like 19.
He's been like 12. I mean, this entire peak of his career. So
I have 3 notes that have been made here to make sure I don't forget to say them. One is that I would say Roglic is a better athlete, but Nibali was a better rider. What this does tell us is just how damn hard the Tour de France is compared to everything else and the level up that it is. We often talk about that. And the other thing is, I think we need to give Roglic the outright record for Vuelta wins, because isn't Jerez like joint with him at the moment? And like, didn't Jerez win 5 but lost one to doping positive and won 4 that he didn't test positive at?
I think that's accurate. Well, I think maybe it was 4, but then they took it and they gave it back to him, actually.
Well, Jerez gave an interview over the weekend saying he's pretty sure that Roglic will get the outright record, and I think he's probably right. Whether that's on countback or next year.
It's about like some of the records I have, nobody else cares.
So this is Ronan making my point for me. I think
only Jerez and Roglic.
I think Roglic is he's a really tricky rider to sort of put into any sort of, I don't know, to kind of define, right? Like he doesn't want to be defined. And I guess the reason for that is because he sits in this really weird place where he is good enough to win lots of things. He's good enough to win some of the biggest bike races in the world. And he is not good enough. Like, we don't put him in that sort of, what do we call it? Like the Super Six or the whatever that group is, right?
He isn't the Super Six.
He was considered Big 4 at the Tour.
Yeah.
At the Tour, but I'm talking about like within the sort of scope of all of pro cycling. We don't necessarily put him in that group. And
he's one of the 6.
I think if he turned up to all the monuments that Evenepoel and Pogačar have turned up to, possibly even Van Aert on occasion, I think he would have won more, but he just hasn't done that. That's been more picky. What if? That's what we're dealing in what ifs right now, aren't we?
But is he not being picky in general about going to races where those guys are not?
Is a monument winner.
Yeah.
He also won Torino with hairy legs.
That alone.
That puts you in legend status just immediately.
I don't know how we got into. I don't know
how we got into this discussion. I think we're not really disagreeing that much here.
No, I don't think we are.
Dude can't win the Tour de France.
You slandered Roglic, Caley, and the rest of us had to jump to his defense.
I didn't slander him. Moo slandered him. I think he is a step below the top 2. And I think that you can't argue that.
I think Moo libeled him, actually, Caley. Let's just be...
Yeah, it's true, actually. He wrote it down. Yeah. Very accurate, Dane. Anyway.
So what have we established? That he's not as good as Pogačar and Diego, which we already...
No. We already knew that.
The listeners have listened for 20 minutes to us deciding, he's not quite as good as Pogačar. Okay.
Basically, we've agreed on his name.
My big question is just like, why can't he do that at the Tour de France? If he's like, what is it? He's got this weird.
So have loads of other people. Look at David Gaudu,
I think he is now not good enough. I think he missed his window.
Yeah. Maybe you're right.
I think in 2019, 2020, 2021, there was a chance. And then Tadej Pogačar came along, and Roglic couldn't stay upright on his bike.
And then when Roglic fell off his bike, this young chap from Denmark turned out to be quite good, and
the fact that he's 34 and therefore almost 35, and therefore basically heading to the retirement home.
Yeah,
I can say this because I'm 35.
I think we sometimes think that generations are longer than they are. in pro cycling, right? Like we talk about like a generational talent or, this is going to be the best rider of his generation, blah, blah, blah. But really most of the time, the generations turn over like every 3 or 4 years, right? We're not talking about like a 10 or 15 year tenure. We're talking about every 3 or 4 years. And I think that's essentially what happened to Roglic, which his generation, this quote unquote, like where he was the man of his generation, was about 2 years long. And he had some bad luck in those 2 years and then got superseded. And I think it's just unfortunate for him. I don't think, like I said, I don't think he'll ever get a Tour. I think he'll probably win another Vuelta. I think Bora's probably okay with that. And they'll just keep sending him to races where Pogacar and Vingegaard aren't. I think that's just the reality for him at this point.
He did get a much later start than most. And that's another big unfortunate thing for him is that he was only reaching his peak when he was, relative like to 30. Pogacar.
Yeah.
He is undoubtedly the best crumb-picking cyclist, former ski jumper ever.
Oh, yeah, that's without doubt.
Another impressive achievement.
We should move on.
Yeah.
So this makes it a Slovenian clean sweep of the Grand Tours this year.
Yeah.
Congratulations to our Slovenian listeners.
Not a UAE Team Emirates clean sweep, but a Slovenia clean sweep.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, that's still pretty incredible, right?
Yeah, there's 2 million people in that country.
Yeah, they are second best nation overall, just behind Belgium and now just ahead of Denmark. And it's basically, obviously there are more than just 2 riders factoring into that, but those 2 are doing a significant amount of the legwork for Slovenia when you think about who's riding and gaining points for Belgium. So it's very impressive.
For reference, Slovenia has about as many people as the state of New Mexico, more than like 10 other U.S. states. And the fact that we have 330 million people in our country, and Sepp Kuss was the first Grand Tour winner in, I don't know, like 1,000 years, really puts it all into perspective.
Technically since Greg LeMond, right? No, Chris Horner. I always forget about Chris Horner.
The Vuelta, it's a great race. You get American winners.
Poor Chris
what
Horner.
other reason do you need to watch the Vuelta?
Before you move on, did we include this because it's like the closest we're going to get to like Pogacar having won all 3 Grand Tours in one season? It feels like a bit of a... It feels like what we really wanted to talk about was like Pogacar winning all 3, and what we're left with is a nation winning all 3, which Ireland very almost done like 30 odd years ago when Roach won the Giro and Tour and the World Championships in 1 year, and Kelly had to stop in like the penultimate day of the Vuelta in the race leader's jersey with a saddle sore the size of an orange, from what I hear.
He should have just stood up the whole way.
That's kind of what I thought when I heard that story also. But I'm wondering, has this nation thing ever happened before? Surely France or someone has won all 3.
Well, I don't know, because back when France was dominating, it was mostly French riders doing the Tour and Italian riders doing the Giro, right? So like there wasn't as much overlap there. We'd have to go back and check. We'd have to go back and look. It may have happened. And so like sort of Anquetil kind of era, but I haven't looked up the stats, so I don't really know. I do want to chat Kern Pharma really quick before we wrap up on the Vuelta here, because I mean they just did incredible things for a team that is kind of pulled out of obscurity, really. I mean, they bumped themselves up something like 30 places in the UCI rankings in the last year.
Last year, yeah.
And then, there were points at the Vuelta this year where they had like half of the lead group with a whole bunch of the best GC riders on the planet, and the rest of them were Kern Pharma. An interesting, we'll call it interesting, development.
Have we ever seen performance like that previously in cycling from
Ronan.
underdog team? No?
Ronan.
Okay.
We should point out, so Pablo Castrillo, who won 2 stages.
Yep.
Was
Super
kind
talent.
of a known entity. He's not a nobody. Yeah. He'd come in. There's been rumors the last couple weeks about signing with Ineos. Won 2 stages and looked hella strong. I mean, he was really impressive. And then their other stage runner, Urco Berrada, was their sort of team leader coming in. He'd finished highly at Burgos. The thing that I think really stands out above that even is what you've pointed out, is that, on one of those later days, they had 4 guys and like half the team was in the day's breakaway. So it wasn't just those 2 guys. I mean, those 2 guys are the ones that took the win.
But it was a breakaway of 43.
That's true. I don't think
it was well whittled down, and they still had like 3 or 4 in there.
That's true, but still, that's 10. That's
Yeah. And Euskaltel didn't get anyone in.
If we're gonna award the overperformer of the Vuelta, it's that team, no question. Right.
And what makes it interesting is that in the next few years, we're going to see some changes in the wildcard system, because the UCI introduced a new, new rule beginning of last year. So before Escape existed, they announced that over the next few years, they're going to reduce the number of teams that a World Tour race is allowed to choose from for the wildcards. So it goes down to the top 50 teams in the UCI rankings next year. And then 2026, it'll be the top 30. And what's interesting about that is that last year, Kern Pharma were ranked 31. And what's even more interesting and particularly fun about it, I think, is that there were, in fact, what was the number I found? 33 individual riders who actually scored more points than a Kern Pharma did in 2023. So it's an interesting one, and it's going to change I think one of the reasons that they wanted to change it was to stop the favoritism for the domestic teams that were going to struggle. When someone like Uno X or more recently Q36.5 might want a chance to actually do something.
I'm kind of surprised that ASO let this happen, because one of the sort of major power play things between ASO and the UCI is the use of wildcards. And it's come to a head a number of times previously where, because ASO really they want the ability to invite anybody they want to their race. And specifically, they want the ability to invite some random French teams, if they really want to do so, to their bicycle race. And UCI wants sort of the highest possible level at the Tour de France. And so this is a UCI rule saying you can only pick from, okay, now it's the top 50, then it's the top 40, then it's the top 30 teams, which once you get through all the World Tour teams, actually only opens up like the top 10, second tier teams. ASO in the past, I think, would have pushed back against this quite vehemently. And I find it interesting that they, at least publicly, haven't yet, because they will struggle to invite some of the teams they want to invite under this rule.
I would think a big reason that they haven't fought this, or maybe they did, we don't know about it, but a big reason this has happened, basically. Arkea and Cofidis are both now World Tour. There are fewer French Pro-Conti, they're called Pro Teams now, teams that the ASO would want to invite every year to make sure they get all the French teams in. I think Total Energies is like the only one they'd have to worry about, because they're a little bit lower ranked, but they're still well within that cutoff.
Yeah, they finished 22nd last year.
So I think the ASO, it's like the Spanish and Italian teams are the ones that are more at risk, because those are the ones who would get basically, they're getting free invites to either the Vuelta or Giro. Those are the ones that are lower ranked, and I think that's the ones that you might see a risk of not getting in. But Total Energies is fine, and then all the other French teams are going World Tour basically.
It's potentially concerning, in the bigger picture sense. It's not great for the lower levels of the sport in those domestic countries like Spain and Italy, where there's trouble with funding anyway. They get, the wildcard to the Tour is a huge step up for a team. Like, they can get another few years out of sponsors for that. So it could, I don't know, we'll see. Everyone seems to be able to find sponsorship eventually. But it's there are some teams, like some of those Belgian teams that used to consistently get a wild card when there were more wild cards allowed. Like, they've pretty much disappeared off the map.
Is the outcome of this rule change that we might not in future see a team turn up to the Vuelta who have never had more than 2 or 3 wins per season, and only other one this season being a single stage of a 2.2 stage race, then turn up and win 15% of the stages in a World Tour Grand Tour? Might that not happen?
I think that might not happen. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that might not happen. Ronan's really on this one. I guess to kind of answer my own question, why the ASO not fight back that hard against this, it's because they will invite whoever they damn well please to their bike race anyway, and they don't really care. They'll abide by the UCI rule until they don't feel like it anymore, and then because they actually do have a lot more power in this sport than the UCI does, if they want to invite some random French team in 2028, they will do so. And I think that's probably why they don't really care.
It's kind of like the ASO say, okay, UCI, you can write your rule things and send in your commissaire guys to like enforce them, but we're actually going to do whatever we want whenever push comes to shove.
Yeah.
It's kind of what they do now.
I've said this numerous times, but if we wanted it like sort of F1 style or league style sport, ASO is the only entity that can make that happen, and they know it, and they just sort of soft power it a lot of the time, primarily by ignoring whatever the UCI is asking them to do. Anyway, that was I think that's enough on the Vuelta. It was a great Vuelta. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, well, it was always going to give me crap for not liking the Vuelta. It's not that I don't like the Vuelta. No one else seems to really like the Vuelta, but the racing was fantastic. The finish was great. Like last couple days, I wouldn't exactly say on tenterhooks, right? Because it sort of always felt inevitable that Roglic would do his thing.
But unless he got taken down by the Red Bull virus, and he did say after the time trial that he apparently went to the toilet 20 times before starting his effort.
He's definitely had too many Red Bulls.
Maybe that's what it was.
We do need to shout out Ben O'Connor, right? Like, it was a spirited defense. He did everything he could. He was still ecstatic with second place, right?
And he spent 13 days in the red jersey.
Yeah, ecstatic to be on the podium, and it was a coup, right? Like, getting into that breakaway was a coup early on in the race, and he played the Vuelta the best way he possibly could, and it was a fantastic 3 weeks for him.
Cosmo raised the point in how the race was won this week, and he's been talking about this the last couple of weeks, really, how this was maybe a bit of a redemption tour for Ben O'Connor for those who watched Tour de France Unchained, where he just didn't come across very well. And I think it's just a total turnaround because it was easy to root for him at this Vuelta. I mean, I feel like he probably had a pretty large portion of the fans watching this race hoping that he would hold on to red. And even though he didn't, people who come out of this race thinking, they like Ben O'Connor a lot more. So good on him for having done that. And I think he did a great job, very media savvy. And it's tricky. You go from not doing this very often to every day you got to do an interview. That's hard work. And he did a really great job of it.
My fear is that Ben O'Connor now either goes back to or continues trying harder to be a GC rider. But actually his fourth place in the Tour and his second place in the Vuelta have both come from breakaways that aren't going to keep happening if you keep getting these GC. And I think he would be much better off as like a stage hunter, and he probably would get many more stages than that from that sort of approach.
He's off to Jayco. They're gonna make him do GC, right? Surely,
especially losing to Simon Yates.
The alternative to that, what you would hope might happen here, is the Thomas de Gent, who did that, finished on the podium at the Giro, and then said, "Okay, I'm not gonna." I mean, maybe for a year or two he tried to be a GC, but he didn't waste too much time chasing that dream anymore. And you realize that breakaway wins, stage wins at Grand Tours were his thing, and became the guy for that for a decade.
Yeah, because it's very rare that riders of that caliber try to do that, and they can be very, very successful if they do it. So, compare, for example, who's a good sort of other side? Maybe Robert Hessink.
I was thinking the same, yeah.
So Robert Hessink kind of stayed in the GC track and then went straight into the kind of the domestique track, right? And never really, he still won some stuff. He's still an incredible rider, but he didn't do the full Thomas de Gent where he went and just said, I'm going to focus on these 3 stages of the Tour de France. I'm the best damn rider in that breakaway by far, and I will win them, right? And he probably could have with his level of talent. And I think that, if you're sort of tracking which direction we'd like Ben O'Connor to go, I would certainly prefer a Thomas de Gent direction to a Robert Hessink direction. Again, that's nothing really against Robert Hessink. He took a track that made a lot of sense for him.
Well, and for his team, he was hugely valuable.
Yeah.
It's true. Also won the Canadian GPs, which is a great moment here to point out that those are coming up this year, and y'all should watch. I'm
kind of wondering how many crumbs could a Ben O'Connor crumb picker pick if a Ben O'Connor crumb picker started picking crumbs.
Well,
I think quite a few crumbs. I don't think he'd rival Roglic in crumb picking, but I think he could pick quite a few crumbs. All right, I think that's enough. That's enough Vuelta from us today. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, Peter Sagan did what? Welcome back, everybody. Dane Cash, Peter Sagan did what?
He rode he rode a bike. Is it a bike? Can we call it a bike?
Yeah, it's a bike boat.
He rode a bike-like object.
Bike? Yeah.
Call it a pedalo, and then people look it up and be really confused.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the way that Ian Treloar described this in the story that he wrote over on escapecollective.com is it's like a training bike, an indoor spin bike mounted on a catamaran. It's kind of how this looks. And so he rode as part of a team. He and a couple of other athletes, a couple of other people. And Valtteri Bottas was one of them. He's an athlete. Apparently, Conor McGregor was supposed to do this, but dropped out at the last minute. They got somebody else. Anyway, a couple people on one team. There's a couple of teams, and they raced along the Côte d'Azur, French Riviera area.
From Corsica to Monaco.
Corsica to Monaco.
Which is far.
Yes.
I took a ferry from Nice to Corsica one time, and it was overnight. It's far.
It took them quite
this
a while.
This was also overnight. It took them a long time.
How long did it take them?
And
they could see the stars at night, Sagan said.
They went like 10 miles, 16k an hour, 10 miles an hour was the speeds that they were trying to shoot for. Anyway, they were doing this all for charity. Kind of an interesting charity that I guess was like to raise awareness for drowning and prevent drownings. And
I mean, it's a real problem in the Mediterranean right now. Like big boats full of people tip over.
That is true. Sad. That did, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Anyway, they finished. I think they were third in this race. They didn't win. Somebody else beat them in this race. But it made for excellent photos, and it was for a good cause, and it's a very Monaco thing.
It's also a very Sagan thing.
For anybody who hasn't seen it, just to clarify your point, and you said they rode as teams, but if you haven't seen it, they're actually like a team of 4, but they were on individual pedal.
Sort of a relay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Relay.
Was it a relay or did they have to ride
individual?
The
yeah.
Like the photos look like they were like 4 of them riding together doing the entire.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell what was photo op and what was actual riding.
It's hard to tell if this actually even happened. Really.
It's kind of hard to tell. Are you guys? This is going to be a ridiculous question. You are familiar with the gentleman Snoop Dogg, right?
I've heard of him.
I'm familiar with the gentleman Snoop Dogg.
Big figure at the Paris Olympics.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm going with this. So Snoop Dogg, his whole thing these days is like to go on side quests, right? Like he's got his millions of dollars, he's got his incredible career, and now he's like, I'm gonna go be NBC's like random guy on the ground at the Paris Olympics and like ride horses and like do fencing and do all kinds of stuff like that. And the reason I mention it is because it feels like Peter Sagan could be that for cycling, right? Like he was at the Paris Olympics. He banged the stick, right? I forget exactly what that's called. It's a French theater thing where they bang this big stick on the ground 3 times to start a show. And Sagan did that at the Olympics, right? Now he's doing boat racing, bicycle boat racing. What other side quest should Peter Sagan go on?
Well, I was going to mention one of his other side quests earlier this year. Had very little to do with cycling, but it was a trading competition.
Oh,
remember this was back in June, but there's some of the quotes from so it was also for charity. It was a bunch of celebrities doing this trading competition, but the quotes are brilliant. Is that Peter Sagan, he used a tactic that he often implemented in his races by staying in the middle of the pack until the perfect moment to launch himself for a final sprint. Wow. Mainly focused on therapeutic stocks throughout the competition. It wasn't until Sagan shorted US Tech in the last days that his portfolio really took off. So there we go. And that was one of the more kind of eyebrow-raising, hang on, what? Moments of summer.
A friend of mine actually participated in this a couple of years ago, Philip Dagnan. I really should have asked him for more information on this event before, but I'd forgotten entirely that he had participated in this. And when I found a photo of him, we've seen that Caleb Ewan has also...
Just to back up here, because we're looking at a photo that our audience cannot see.
Yeah,
we're now looking at a photo from this bicycle boat event that Caleb Ewan apparently also did. Again, also for the foundation Princess Charlene.
The publicity is not great for this event. They could raise more money if they told people about it.
This is the thing. They raised $300,000, which is a lot of money, and there are so many.
Loads for Monaco.
It doesn't, but there are so many of these things that actually.
Yeah, true.
I'm vaguely aware of existing. There's the B King criterion that happens in November. There is a cycle also that Prince Albert at the moment? Prince Albert, first of all, we should probably mention that Princess Charlene and Prince Albert are both like Olympians. And so quite a lot of their fundraising actually revolves around sport. And the other one that I know of happening is some sort of cycle from Nice to Monaco, which like is not that great of a distance to cycle, but raises a similar amount of money. So I think they just like, there's so much money in that area, they don't really need to publicize them all that much. The people in the area
just sort of like
money know about them.
They just sort of dig around the couch cushions every once in a while, and hundreds of thousands of dollars pop out.
Sounds nice.
So what's Peter's? Before we wrap up on this, what is Peter Sagan's next Snoop Dogg-esque side quest?
He could start a competing company to Floyd's of Leadville. I feel like that would fit his vibe and would be fun.
I'd like to sort of see him back involved in the Tour de France in some way. So like the Bernard Hinault sort of shoving people off of Tour de France podiums side quest, I think was really good. I'd like to see Peter Sagan come back to the Tour and be like the podium enforcer now that the Badger is sort of getting up there in years.
His podium antics have gotten him in trouble in the past, so
that's not,
that is very true. Maybe less those sort of antics.
Less of that.
Yeah.
He could, in these pictures from this event, his team was Team Serenity, which is also the name of Dijkman and Ewan's team. But it sounds very apprentice. But anyway, move past that. And say that Sagan, he looked very much less like a cyclist than he used to. And he was never a climber, so he was rather more chunky than
Dude's been in the gym.
Dude has been in the gym. So I can see him, or I'm imagining him right now, representing cycling on one of those tacky TV shows when they do the gladiator run things.
Like a Ninja Warrior thing?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I can definitely see him doing that.
My mind was going to TV as well, and for some reason it was going to the Kardashians, but either Gladiator or The Apprentice. I think you're on the.
These are great ways for these guys to go and just like make a couple more bucks, right? Like they get paid to come on these TV shows. We could get him like the one of the dance shows. That would
I don't
be great.
think celebrities get paid for that. They raise charity money.
Well, they are paid in
goodwill.
Yeah, promotion.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. It depends on the level of celebrity, I think. Peter Sagan's probably not quite to that level. But yeah, I think like a dance competition would be fun. A Ninja Warrior competition would be fun. We do have one other sort of, speaking of side quests, we have a bit of a side quest at the end of this, near the end of this episode. We just wanted to drop into Great Britain Corner. Kit, we've got a pile of sort of news items here. The first of which is Cav says he's not going to retire. Yeah,
so apparently Cav says he's not going to retire.
He's going to race the boat race next year.
I'm actually not. I heard this yesterday from my esteemed colleagues here, and apparently he was just ambushed at the Tour of Britain, where he was being a podium dude. He wasn't racing, and just kind of strolling around at his home race. Yeah, and he was asked what his plans are for next year, and he said, "I don't know. Maybe I'll race again."
Was he just messing with us, or is he actually? Is there a chance that he comes back?
I'm still leaning in that direction, but I know that some of you guys would like to think he's going to keep bashing the drum for a bit longer. It would be good if he sticks around for Astana. They need somebody to score some points.
I would disagree with that.
Yeah, they need to spend their money on actually getting UCI points.
That is very true.
And that's the thing.
Paycheck is probably very large, so they want lots of smaller riders to score lots more points more frequently. Yeah,
he has 247 UCI points this year.
Yeah, it's because he only wins stages.
And
you don't get points
for
stages.
Of them even. Now.
He doesn't. He only wins stage.
Well, he won but he won stages at Hungary, and those are even smaller points.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's
True.
what I mean.
What you need to do is you need to have the budget to sign Mark Hershey, who will get you all of the UCI points the world. He is the UCI point king.
Yeah. Suck on that, UAE Team Emirates.
Yeah.
Well, I would be all in favor of Cav coming back. It's a spectacle. It's great. It's fun. I still kind of doubt that will ever happen.
Our comment section would love it.
You never know. We do have some bummer news out of the Isles, which is that Trinity Racing, which has been I would say one of the world's premier sort of development programs for quite some time now, is in danger of shutting down. This is sort of being floated out there. I don't know what to say about this other than it'd be a massive hit because a lot of fantastic riders have come through this program.
Tom Pidcock,
they were the vehicle for Pidcock when he wasn't ready to transition yet.
Who has also had some bummer news. Just a real quick thing: concussion for Pidcock will miss the Canadian GPs. It's a bit of a bummer time.
Yeah, he's not having a good time of it. There are so few teams, and they're getting fewer and fewer on the pro. And there aren't any pro teams, and the Conti teams
Ineos,
are ever more in trouble.
There's
Ineos should just pick up Trinity, right? Like take the organization, put some money into it, call it the Ineos development team, and provide a pathway for these riders into their team. Because one of many reasons Ineos feels like they're falling behind is that they don't have this development pathway at the moment. And other teams are picking up on this. Other teams are sort of building a very sort of football-esque academy model almost, and being able to move riders through the ranks from very, very young juniors into the World Tour at whatever point that makes sense for that athlete. And Ineos isn't doing this at the moment. They're still
they're
trying to
signing
rely.
really young riders, but they're not developing them. They're just chucking them in at the deep end.
Exactly. And they're still trying to rely on this fact that, like, so, 10 years ago, they could just sort of come in with more money and kind of grab whoever they wanted to. And now they're competing against UAE and Visma for the same riders. And, I guess probably to some extent, teams like Trek that also have a fair amount of money. There's more competition for these young superstars. And I think that unless you sort of grab them early and you show them that your program cares about them, because it's about more than money too, right? Like, riders used to want to go to Ineos because they felt they'd have the best chance of winning there. And now riders want to go to UAE or Visma because they feel like they have the best chance of winning there. Ineos I think they're missing a trick here. And if Trinity shuts down and it just disappears, that's bad for Ineos as well, right? Like that is where some of their marquee riders, including Pidcock, have come from.
I've heard they are struggling for cash, though, so it might be hard to pick up a third division team, with their limited budget.
Right. I think just all the attention is elsewhere. Last thing in Great British Corner, the Tour of Britain happened last week, and photos just keep popping up on our Discord. Of course, our member-only Discord, which you can access if you are a member, and you can chat with all of your fellow escapees. Primarily of Stevie Williams holding potted plants, looking kind of annoyed about it.
Annoyed or bewildered?
Both. For the uninitiated, what is happening here?
Has anyone
Bicycle Race presents random prize to rider on podium. It's a well-worn tradition at this point.
Ronan, you have experience in this regard.
I won a block of cheese bigger than my head at the Tour of Britain one time.
Was it good?
I didn't actually get to taste it. We gave it to a neighbour in our house in Belgium. So took it the whole way home from Britain and then give it away. I'm not sure why we didn't just give it away in Britain.
How did your car smell at the end of it? Cheese?
It was in the...
having driven back from France with family, with all of us piled into the car and a bunch of cheese and wine at the footwell. It's not good.
Oh.
So how many plants did Stevie Williams win last week?
Well, how many?
Do we know?
How many days did he spend in the lead?
At least three plants. At least three plants.
That was why he got it, right? It was like having was it the leader's jersey?
He's wearing the leader's jersey on the podium in the photographs.
Yeah. It's a decent sized plant. Like, you're not getting that back on Ryanair. That's not happening.
I think this is a common theme too, where the smaller races give weird prizes. Like, once you get to a high enough level, you get a cute little ASO lion or a cool trophy like a trident. Okay, that might be tricky to get home, but smaller races.
Quintana posted a photograph of a trophy from some race in Europe that broke on its way to Colombia.
Oh, that's sad. Was it a trident?
I'm not sure it was a trident. I think it was that Tour de Suisse hourglass thing.
Oh, that's another good one. Right? Yeah, they do have these, but then you get these. You get the salmon from Arctic race, the pig, Trobo-Leon, and how are you getting these back? It is an interesting dilemma.
I wonder if they just, in this case, just handed him off to a soigneur who had to drive back to mainland Europe at some point.
Or give it to his parents in Wales.
Yeah.
Team trucks and team buses and team campers and that will be, you can fit loads of prizes in there, but I'm pretty certain that Sean Kelly won a donkey one time. And I'm pretty sure I've heard of other riders winning animals as prizes, like cows and things. I think that donkey might actually have led to Kelly's, donkey trading industry that he...
What?
Yeah, he bought and sold donkeys. Not quite sure why, but it is a thing, and he always kept a few in Belgium and in Ireland. So I'm pretty sure that stemmed from winning a donkey at a race one time. But then, you get all the random prizes like bags of spuds and. Yeah,
there are some races in some small races in Belgium and the Netherlands. I've seen they get things like kettles and rice cookers. And you see them on the podium with their flowers and a box from IKEA or whatever between their feet.
I would imagine the parents in Wales are the ones with the potted plant. That's the obvious place to send it, right?
Or wherever he actually lives.
That is enough on Stevie Williams' potted plants. If you haven't seen this photo, go search it on the internet. It's good stuff. He just he looks just utterly
baffled.
Yeah, that's a good one by this particular prize. That is enough. Great British Corner.
Not particularly great British Corner.
Yeah. Somewhat, actually, mostly bad news British Corner, except for the potted plants. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Mount Rushmore of cycling kit. Welcome back, everybody. Actually, Ronan, we have an update from you. You've been working on this story for a little while. This is a kit related story. So this is where the Mount Rushmore of kit. This is where we're headed.
Not the kit that you've just heard, but kit that you wear. The
different
kit.
Cycling clothing kit. Yeah. Anyway, you
I used to think my hobby was collecting kits.
I have so much. Anyway, Ronan, you've been reporting this story basically around the sort of like strange musical chairs that is happening with kit suppliers and kit suppliers shutting down and pro teams having to buy their own stuff. So, give me the headline. What's going on here?
Yeah, it sort of stems from, there's a bit of like the transfer rumor mill that happens this time every year. I think Remco and Pidcock were the two main subjects in that this year. But there's another like transfer saga happening in the background that is less well known, less well publicized, and that is of World Tour clothing suppliers and the deals that go into some of those sponsorship arrangements. And we're talking big money here. You're talking like one supplier I spoke to told me that they provide up to 1.5 million euros worth of kit, 250 to 500,000 euro worth of cash on top of that to sponsor a World Tour team, and another close to 250,000 euros in R&D throughout a season. So you could be talking like that kit value is obviously retail value. That's not like cost to the manufacturer, but you could be talking, depending on what way you want to look at it, up to like 2 million euro worth of a deal here, and a considerable chunk of a team's budget. And that's sort of been the status quo for the top teams, especially since the COVID pandemic a couple of years ago, when the teams could sort of name their figures when it came to these negotiations with clothing suppliers. But this year, it seems to be a market swinging back towards the supplier. And some teams are currently without a supplier for next year, including, as we understand it, Visma Lease a Bike. The team wouldn't actually comment on do they have a supplier or not, but their supplier this season, AGU, is on the verge of bankruptcy. That may or may not happen. There's a Dutch thing that they've entered with the courts there that might see them avoid bankruptcy. But either way, it doesn't look good for them supplying like a 2 million euro contract to a World Tour team. From what we understand, it looks like Visma might actually turn to producing their own kit for 2025. What
would that look like? So, would they just... So AGU
probably looks like they go to
before.
the AGU manufacturing facility somewhere in Asia and they ask them to reproduce what they had for 2024, and that the team themselves would pay for it rather than AGU. So that's probably what it actually looks like. The reasoning for it is a bit less clear. It's most likely that the reason they would do this is because it's happening so late in this season. These deals should have been wrapped up months ago at this point, that actually it would make more sense for them to put this off until next year, when they've had more time to find a higher bidder to get the best deal possible for 2026 and onwards. There is, though, a theory that part of the reason teams may actually, this might be like a glimpse into the future, and that more teams may go in this sort of in-house approach, or at least an entirely exclusive partnership with a manufacturer, because so much R&D time, so much R&D money, so much aerodynamics hinges on clothing these days, that teams are now like, there's some level of competitive paranoia creeping in, where teams are like thinking, well, if this clothing supplier is making this new skin suit for us and it's that much faster, but they also supply that other team, is there a problem with that? And there could be, or there might not be. But it's a fascinating theory to consider, and it kind of leads into one of the other big shifts this year from what we understand, is that Specialized will actually up their partnership with Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, and they will supply team clothing to that outfit also, replacing Sportful. They do already supply clothing to SD Works on the women's side, but this would be their first men's team. And it's thought to be part of like a much broader deal, where Specialized will supply bikes to like Red Bull Formula 1 teams and MotoGP and all sorts of sport. Apparently, Specialized may also start like leveraging the R&D capabilities of Red Bull Advanced Technologies, and so there's a lot going on.
I've always found that barring a couple specific examples, that the return on that investment for a lot of these cycling kit companies seems not to be there, right? Like, is anyone going out and buying AGU kit because Visma has it? I mean, maybe there's some sort of deal, like does AGU make a cut off of all of that replica kit, for example, that Visma has been selling? Like, there may be sort of other alternate pathways to revenue there, but like the Rafa one has always made sense because it sort of fits with EF really well. And back in the day, when Rafa was a different company and looking for a different sort of brand, fit quite well with Sky, right? Like that whole sort of British cycling kind of thing rose together. I think Castelli's done a good job over the years of kind of tying themselves to really, really high performance clothing. But in general, a lot of these kit companies are chucking a huge amount of money at this, and it doesn't seem like they're getting that much out of it. And it would make sense at that point for teams to just go, listen, we could just do this ourselves, right? Like the expertise is often with the factory, and we can just go make the stuff that we need to make.
Well, I don't want to give too much of the article away because it is worth going over to escapecollective.com and reading it, but we delve into that as well. Like, why would manufacturers be motivated to get into the World Tour if the cost of entry is so high and the ongoing cost of staying there is so high? There's quite a few examples of clothing manufacturers that have seen the World Tour as like a ticket to success or have been in the World Tour previously and either are no longer in existence because they're now like out of business or are going through shakier times, and they definitely won't be committing that sort of commitment in future. You mentioned Rafa. Apparently they were like, a deal was practically done to supply Visma for 2025 and onwards, and at the last moment, I mean like the night before it was due to be signed, that deal fell through at Rafa's behest from what we understand. But yeah, there's I think the key thing now is that it really only makes sense for clothing suppliers who are operating in that sort of high performance where their storylines and their narrative matches the World Tour. It's not like you can just get into the World Tour if it's not really in line with the product you're creating. And that was one of the strange things about AGU. And granted, Visma probably sells more kit than anybody because they go very, very hard on their clothing and that. But yeah, just if you go onto the AGU website and if you see Wout van Aert winning a time trial and then you go onto the AGU website, you're probably not going to find that skin suit there.
The only pro team kit getting sold at a higher volume than the Visma official kit is the knockoff Quick Step kit, which is absolutely everywhere. In Belgium, where you see these people riding around, you're like, I don't think that came from an official source. I don't think that is legit. Well, yeah, go check out Ronan's story on the site.
I've already teased some of the numbers, but just to make sure people actually go across and read it, we're talking like a World Tour team. This is from a supplier. They would be getting 700 race suits.
700 race suits.
700 race suits for just the men's team. So if you have a men and women's team, that's, yeah, I don't think it's quite double, but it's going to be a lot more. Well over 700 jerseys. But I'm looking for the big number. There's a lot of 700s basically. Gloves, arm warmers and stuff. 1,700 pairs of socks. 3,000 caps. It's, yeah, there's a lot.
Considering that the team sizes are 30 riders typically.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That is totally wild. All right, go check out Ronan's story on the site. I've teased the Mount Rushmore of cycling kit, the greatest cycling kits of all time, as determined by us. Unfortunately, for anybody listening to this on the free feed, that's going to be in After Dark.
You don't get to disagree with us for free.
You don't get these spicy, flaming hot opinions for free. We're going to head to After Dark. Just for anybody confused by this, After Dark is just it's like an extra 15-20 minutes that we tack on to the end of the show where we get, I don't know, a little extra.
It may actually be bright while you listen to it. It's still bright here while we record it.
Yes. But
usually we just let our hair down even more than we do in the rest of the show. We just get a bit more daft.
And you need to be listening to the membership feed, the members only feed, to get After Dark, of which of course means you need to be a member. So you need to head to escapecollective.com/join, sign up. When you do that, you'll get instructions on how to get that member feed into your podcast player, and then you can listen to us talk about the Mount Rushmore of cycling kit. If you're on the free feed, we'll see you next week on Spin Cycle Podcast. And if you're listening to the member feed, then hang out because we're headed to After Dark.